The night I couldn't breathe, the walls seemed to collapse with every shallow gasp. I reached for the phone, every joint aching, every breath scraping like sandpaper against my chest. I called Sophia, my only daughter, my blood, my pride. It rang 5 times. Then the voicemail. Again, voicemail. I left a message, not begging, just asking. Carrillo, I think I need help. I can't drive to the hospital. If you could come from Barcelona, my voice broke, not because of the illness, but because of something older, something lonelier. She never returned the call. 3 hours later, the porch light came on. A soft, but firm knock echoed at the door. It wasn't Sophia, it was Lucia. She was there with a thick green cardigan, holding a thermos and a travel bag, her curly hair wet from the rain. She didn't ask for permission, didn't make a fuss, just entered and said, "You're pale. We need to leave now." I didn't argue. In the emergency room, the machines beeped, and the nurses moved as if they were choreographing a dance I wasn't invited to. They came and went. Every time I opened my eyes, there she was, Lucia, wiping my forehead, adjusting the blanket, answering the doctor when I couldn't form words. I hoped she would leave. That first night, I whispered, "You don't have to stay. I'm sure you have work." She shook her head. "I work from home." I told Miguel I'm staying with you. He understands. Miguel, my son, my quiet boy who married this woman I never fully understood. I never disliked her, but I didn't let her in. She pulled out a worn pocketbook from her bag. "You still like Dolores Redondo novels, don't you?" I blinked. How did she know? "I saw them on your shelf, all with dog-eared corners. You stop at chapter 6 a lot." That night, she read to me with her low, warm voice. I fell asleep before she finished the second chapter. In the morning, she had already made tea in the hospital kitchen and left a sticky note on the bedside table. "They said your oxygen is improving. I'll be back after I shower. I left your cream near the sink, a little heart drawn beside it." I stared at that note for a long time. That morning, I realized who had become a stranger. And the stranger I had kept at a distance. She had just brought her heart into the room and wasn't going anywhere. I hadn't always been this silent woman in a hospital bed, waiting for someone to remember I exist. I once had a flower shop on the corner of Gambla de Mar and the Port Walk, Elena's Flowers, painted lavender with planters that overflowed every spring. I knew every anniversary in town. I wrapped every bouquet as if it were a secret message. It was my pride, my identity. Until Sophia entered the Autonomous University of Barcelona. She called me excited. "Mom, I got in. Master's in business, but I need help with the first semester tuition, just until I stabilize." I sold the shop the next week. I remember packing the vases in silence, the scent of roses clinging to my clothes. I told myself it was worth it, that someday she would look back and say, "Mom made it possible." She didn't. She never mentioned the sacrifice again. After the university came the internships, then the promotions, then the move to Barcelona with Adrian, her other half. I visited once. The doorman didn't know who I was. The guest room had no sheets. Sophia apologized. She said they didn't expect me to stay. She called when it suited her. Birthdays, sometimes more often, I'd get a message. "Work is crazy, but I love you, Mom. I'll call soon." She never did. When Miguel and Lucia got married, I was still mourning Sophia's silence. Lucia was warm, but careful, always polite, always offering help I never accepted. She sent me a Christmas card that first year, even though Sophia didn't. "Grateful for you," it said, written in elegant cursive with a small watercolor drawing of our family dinner in the corner. I kept it on the fridge for months. One winter, I slipped on the ice and fractured 2 ribs. Sophia wrote, "I'm overwhelmed with deadlines. Can Miguel stop by to see you?" Miguel was in Madrid that week. Lucia showed up that night, brought food, sat with me as I complained with every cough, washed the dishes while humming to herself. She didn't post anything on social media, never made me feel like a burden. And yet, for years, I defended Sophia to anyone who asked. "She's just busy," I'd say. "Her work takes it all out of her." But the truth was, I gave everything to Sophia. My business, my time, my health. I bent into corners so she'd never feel the hunger I knew. And somehow, in all that bending, I lost sight of who deserved my roots. Because while Sophia always promised to return when things calmed down, it was Lucia who kept showing up right in the middle of the storm. Hospitals have their own kind of silence, clean, metallic, hollow, the kind that wraps around your bones when you're too weak to fill it with your own voice. The nights were the worst. The machines hissed and beeped to the rhythm of my lungs, the oxygen tubes curling around my face like vines that had found their way. Every breath was a negotiation. My body tired of being asked to keep going. My spirit tired of doing it alone, except I wasn't alone. Lucia never asked if she should stay, she just did. She folded her coat over the plastic guest chair the first night and didn't touch it again for a week. Every afternoon, she put on comfy socks and a zip-up hoodie and slid into the narrow recliner next to my bed. She brought her own pillow from home, scented with lavender. On the second night, she came in with a small diffuser. "This might help you sleep," she said softly, placing it by the window. "Only eucalyptus and mint, no chemicals." The nurses began to notice her too. "Your daughter is wonderful," one of them smiled as she checked my four. "It's my daughter-in-law," I corrected out of habit. The nurse blinked. "Well, she seems like more than that." I didn't know how to respond. By the third day, Lucia knew the names of everyone. Clara, the night shift nurse who brought extra flan cups. Marta, the assistant who braided my hair when I couldn't lift my arms. Lucia brought them chocolates on Thursday. "Thanks for taking care of my mother-in-law," she said. She never raised her voice, never complained. She read to me when I was too tired to keep my eyes open. Old favorites, Dolores Redondo, some Almudena Grandes. She even brought a crossword book, and we solved them out loud. For letters. Owner of a beloved flower shop. "Elena," I said with a hoarse voice, smiling for the first time in days. She brushed my hair every night. I hadn't realized how long it had grown. Curly gray streaks at the rough, fine tips. She untangled it carefully, then tied it into a soft braid with a silk ribbon. "Done. You look like a queen who's just resting her crown." On the fourth night, Sophia sent her contribution. A basket of fruit, no note, just a printed card from the delivery service. "Get well soon, Sophia." I stared at the perfect apples, the polished pears, the block of cheese wrapped in plastic that would outlast me. Lucia didn't comment, just unpacked the basket, washed a handful of grapes, and placed them in a bowl next to my water. "At least they don't have seeds," she said with a small smile. That night, I stayed awake long after they turned off the lights. I slightly turned to the right. The glow from Lucia's tablet illuminated her face. She was checking something for work. I watched her without her noticing as she pinched the bridge of her nose. She took a sip of her tea, then looked at me to make sure I was still breathing. She did this every 20 minutes. She thought I didn't notice, but she was wrong. For the first time, I wondered if Sophia had ever watched me sleep like that, or remembered that I liked my tea with a splash of milk, or knew that once I dreamed of opening a second flower shop on the coast. It wasn't the distance that hurt, it was the absence. Sophia gave me fruit. Lucia gave me her nights, her time, her presence. One brought only a gesture, the other brought me back to life. It was a Sunday afternoon. The air in the hospital room was thick with antiseptic and the faint hum of the daytime TV. I drifted between the present and the past, trapped between the creaking of my old porch and the beep of my heart monitor. Lucia had gone out to get you and a couple of new socks from the visitors' lounge. I remember it because her slippers squeaked as she walked, and she smiled at the human quality of that sound, the reality of it in a world that had turned clinical and cold. Clara, the youngest nurse, came in to check my vital signs. Her hair was in two messy buns, and she smelled faintly of cinnamon gum. "Hello, Mrs. Navarro." Her daughter left a message on the nurse's line, something about documents, she said, gently tapping the buttons on the wall-mounted phone next to the cabinet. Before I could respond, before I could ask her to wait, she pressed the wrong button. The room filled with Sophia's voice. "Hello, this is Sophia Navarro. If she dies, can someone take care of the will? I can't deal with that right now." I told her to get life insurance, but of course, she never listens. "Just tell me what needs to be signed. I'm not driving there." Then silence. Then the automated voice. Message saved. End of new messages. Clara froze. Her face paled. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Navarro. I didn't mean. I turned my head toward the wall. Could you give me a moment? I said. She nodded and quickly left, the door closing with a soft click. That was the moment everything broke. I didn't cry out loud. I didn't scream or curse or throw things around the room like in the movies. I just cried. Quiet, painful sobs that shook my chest and stole the little breath I had left. Because it wasn't just the words, it was the tone, efficient, cold, as if I were just a point on a to-do list. She had already prepared for my death as if it were an inconvenience. She had already emotionally buried me. A few minutes passed, maybe 20. I couldn't say it. I was still staring at the wall when I felt a gentle weight pressing against the side of the bed. Lucia didn't say a word, didn't ask, just reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were warm, firm, present. I didn't ask if she had heard it. I didn't need to. The tension in the room had changed. The heaviness between us. I looked at the chipped corner of the wallpaper. My voice, barely a whisper, sounded so tired of me. Lucia's hand squeezed mine. She doesn't know what she's losing, she said softly. I looked at her then. Her eyes were glassy, but not with pity, with anger, not loud or ostentatious, but deep, controlled. The kind of anger you reserve for someone you once tried to love. I'm sorry, she added, but she wasn't the one who needed to apologize. That night, when Lucia fell asleep again in the recliner, arms crossed, tablet on her lap, mouth slightly open, I stared at the ceiling and made a promise I never thought I'd make. If I get out of this room alive, I won't leave my life in the hands of someone who has already buried me. That was the moment I made my decision, not out of revenge, but for clarity, for the raw, undeniable truth I finally allowed myself to feel. Sophia may be my daughter, but Lucia is the one who stayed. The sun was shining that morning, unusually bright for Tarragona, as if the universe was trying too hard to pretend it was a good day. I sat on the edge of the hospital bed, my legs hanging, my discharge papers and a manila folder on the rolling tray beside me. The nurse handed me a pen. Sign here, Mrs. Navarro. You're officially free. Free. What a strange word. When your bones still ache, and your heart feels heavier than your suitcase. Is your daughter coming to pick you up? She asked politely, unaware of how loaded that question had become. I didn't answer, keeping my voice steady. She's busy. Sophia had responded to the discharge update with a 2-word message. I'm glad. That was it. No questions about transportation, no offer to visit, just one punctuated line, not with care, but with relief. Lucia arrived exactly at 9 a.m., as she had said. She walked through the doors with a cloth bag over her shoulder and a thermos in hand. Good morning, she smiled. I brought your cardigan, the one with the pearl buttons. I know you hate that hospital gown. She helped me put on the clothes as if it were something glamorous, not weak, just worthy of her time. Then she bent down to tie my shoes. My laces were carefully tied in double knots, like a mother getting a child ready for their first day back in the world. She wheeled me out, her hand firm on the handle, greeting every nurse we passed by name. The car was warm when we got in. She had thought to park it in the sun while she buckled my seatbelt carefully and smiled. I made your favorite tea at home, chamomile with honey, and I filled the pantry with those blueberry and almond cookies you like. Ah, the soft ones, not the mushy ones. I stared at her for a long moment, not because I was surprised anymore, but because I realized how foolish I had been to expect this kind of care from someone else. Lucia, I said quietly, my voice hoarse, do you know a good inheritance lawyer? She blinked, her smile wavering. For now, I nodded. She didn't probe. She didn't ask what I was planning, just placed her hand over mine, resting on the armrest. I know one, she said softly. And he's kind. We drove in silence for a few minutes after that. The wind played with the loose strands of her hair as she navigated the curves of the coastal road. I closed my eyes and let the sun warm my face. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt chosen, not out of obligation, not because of blood, but because someone decided I mattered enough to remember the little things. And that was what finally convinced me. The person who shows up for your recovery is the one who should shape what you leave behind. The lawyer's office was hidden between a bakery and a bookstore on Calle Mayor, an old brick building with ivy climbing up its side, something that had earned the right to remain still in time. I hadn't been there since Antonio passed away, when we wrote our first will, when Sophia still called me twice a week and asked what I wanted for Mother's Day. The air inside smelled faintly of leather and dust. Mr. Torres, my lawyer for almost 20 years, greeted me with a kind smile and a hand on my shoulder. "Are you sure about this?" he asked after I explained everything. My house, my savings, the old gardening tools Antonio left, even the silver tea set that belonged to my grandmother. "Everything," I said, "for Lucia Navarro. No one else." He didn't flinch, just nodded, professional and measured. "I'll file the update today. It'll be official next week." Back home, the sky darkened in that soft gray of Tarragona. Lucia had just replanted the jostle near the porch. Her hands were covered in dirt. She looked radiant, earthy, alive, real. "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice firm. She looked up, brushing the hair from her face with the back of her wrist. "Everything's fine. I changed my will," I said. "The house, the savings, the garden, it's all yours." She froze. "Elena, I'm not doing this out of anger," I said before she could object. "I'm doing it for clarity." Lucia stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans, but I didn't do anything to deserve it. I didn't expect it. I shook my head. "You gave me your time, your care, your presence. That's not nothing, it's everything." She sat beside me on the porch step, silent for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Are you sure Sophia will understand?" I didn't answer, but I no longer lived to be understood by those who didn't try. The call came 3 days later. Sophia. I recognized the ringtone before I saw her name. The same ringtone I used to answer with a smile, now sounding like an alarm. I didn't answer. She tried again. Then she sent a message. "Seriously? You're giving her the house? Are you crazy? Call me now." I placed the phone face down on the kitchen counter. Lucia was back in the garden, humming while pruning the bushes along the edge. The air smelled sweet and fresh. I didn't need to be poisoned by arrogance. For the first time, I didn't feel like I owed Sophia an explanation. She had made her choice, and now I had made mine. Because legacy isn't about blood. It's about who shows up with open hands and a full heart. It's about who carries your weight when you can't anymore. And who would do it again, without asking for anything in return. I didn't leave my life behind with anger. I passed it forward to the one who never treated it like a burden. The sign was simple, hand-painted on the soft band of a piece of driftwood. The flower stand, fresh flowers, and quiet joy. Our flower stall was right next to the boardwalk in Tarragona, near the cliff where the seagulls spiraled and the sea whispered secrets to the shore. Lucia would place crates of dahlias, wild sweet peas, and pale garden roses every morning. I made the bouquets. Not perfect, no wire, no foam, just stems, ribbon, and instinct. We didn't make much money. That wasn't the point. Sometimes a stranger would stop and say, "It smells like a memory here." I'd smile and nod. It was a memory for me too. My joints still ache some days. I move slower, but I'm alive, truly alive. Lucia had started keeping a journal on the bench behind the stall when business was slow. Sometimes I'd catch her sketching little versions of our bouquets. She never said much about it, but one day I saw a doodle in the corner of the page, a tiny version of me, sitting with a sun hat, tying stems with a ribbon. She drew me as she saw me whole, valuable, still blooming. Then one afternoon, Sophia came. I saw her the moment she got out of the car. Heels too high for the boardwalk, sunglasses too big for sincerity. Her presence broke the stillness like thunder before a storm. Lucia stood up, ready to intercept, but I raised a hand. "Let me," I said. Sophia approached with the air of someone rehearsing a scene she'd never fully practiced. Her voice was sharp. "Mom, we need to talk." I pointed to the bench behind the stall. She sat stiffly, as if she could stain it. She didn't ask how I was, didn't notice the fresh hydrangeas, went straight to the point. "I don't understand what happened. Why did you give everything to her? Why?" Her voice trembled, just enough to almost make me feel pity for her. But pity isn't the same as regret. I looked her in the eye. Really looked at her and said the words I had been holding back. You made time for my death. She made time for my life. She shuddered. There was no voice raised, no shouting, no accusations. I simply spoke the truth, the one that lives in the bones of a woman who has stopped apologizing for being forgotten. Sophia stood up without saying another word. She didn't cry, didn't shout. She just walked back to her car and left, shrinking into the distance like a chapter that had finally closed. I returned to the stall where Lucia handed me a cup of hot tea. We sat together on the garden bench while the wind played with the petals on the table. I used to think love came with blood, I said softly. But blood can clot, and love, when chosen, blooms.